Yeah, so this is kind of weird to see if this just popped up in your inbox. This is pretty much a dead channel that I started back when I was in 8th grade, when I was uploading gaming and airsoft content. And I stopped uploading when I was a sophomore towards the beginning of the year because people started finding out that I had a gaming YouTube channel, and I was super embarrassed. And like any other insecure high schooler, I decided it was a good idea to just delete everything and just pretend like it never happened. Which is a huge bummer because the more I thought about it over the years, that was definitely a huge mistake. I let social pressures get in the way of something that I actually had fun doing. Like, it was a really bad decision. But now, looking back on it, of course, as a graduated, fully matured man, I figure, what the hell, let's just start this thing and let's get it going again. I've always had a creative itch throughout my whole life, starting way back in elementary school when I wrote stupid little books for the school library. And ever since I stopped uploading back in sophomore year, I've been left with what feels like a kind of a creative void in my life. So now that I'm in my gap year working, I figure now is as good of time as any to start letting my creative side work again. I'll pretty much just be posting movie reviews for now since I got that nifty Regal Unlimited subscription that they offer now. I'll also most likely post some gaming stuff too, and I'm sure I'll be branching into a bunch of different things as time goes on. In regards to the channel name, I changed it back in my sophomore year when people in my marketing class first discovered that I had a YouTube channel. In the process of deleting all the videos off my channel, for some reason I looked at my name and thought, man, the Battle Rebel is just way too cringy to even look at anymore. Let me change that shit to Flaming Donkey instead. Up until that point, I used the Battle Rebel for pretty much every account I made that wasn't school or work related, a name I grew to resent because I associated it with cringy prepubescent screaming and horribly cheesy sound effects. So I did the only logical thing to do and changed my name to the Flaming Donkey. Side note, when I decided to rename all my accounts with that name, I was completely unaware of the fact that flaming was a term that pretty much meant gay. Flamboyantly gay, to be specific. So now I'm basically stuck with a name that you can translate to gay ass. I really have no idea why I mentioned that, I just thought that was kind of funny. Oh, and another important side note, some of those people in my marketing class subscribed to my channel back then, so they actually have a decent probability of seeing this video. And if you are one of those people that teased me about my channel almost 3 years ago and ended up watching this video, I don't want you to think that you bullied me or anything. That's not the point of this at all. I never held any kind of resentment for you guys in any way. I was just embarrassed because I told myself that having a YouTube channel wasn't cool. And arguably, it definitely still isn't, but you know, it never was something that hurt me emotionally or anything like that. It was just pretty much one of those things where I was like, wanted to be cool, and I was like, no, this, I can't be doing this anymore, which is just stupid, and it's totally my fault. Like, it wasn't anything brought on by you guys, it was just all me. With all that being said, I'm gonna pretty much try to upload on a semi-regular basis. I'm not really quite sure what I mean by that yet, but I'm gonna figure it out, and yeah. So without further ado, I'm gonna have to shit on this garbage movie. I was actually a huge fan of the first movie. I watched the first Zombieland back when I was like 10 years old. The first time I watched it, I was at my friend's house because there was definitely no way my parents were gonna let me watch a rated R movie at that age. Luckily for me, I had that one friend who had the really cool parents who let him play Gears of War and watch Friday the 13th right out of the womb. Anyways, even as a dumb kid who doesn't know anything about anything, I knew that that movie was actually really good. It was hilarious from start to finish, and upon rewatching as an adult, you can actually see some great intentionality with the characters and the way that they are handled, especially towards the midpoint of the movie. Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson, Emma Stone, and Abigail Breslin gave awesome performances that maintained great energy throughout the film. While it was a silly comedy, the writers didn't shy away from writing their characters as actual human beings with character arcs to them. Remember when the movie showed us that Woody Harrelson's character Tallahassee is traumatized by the loss of his adorable puppy? You see flashbacks of him bathing and playing with the dog and you think, "Aw, shit, that's actually kinda sad." Only for the movie to reveal later that he actually lost his child, which is so traumatizing to him that he needs to tell people that it was a puppy because he can't bear to talk about the horrible loss and pain in his life. I mean, here you are enjoying this superbly entertaining zombie action comedy movie when you're blindsided by some actual character development that deepens your understanding of one of the protagonists. It showed that the writers actually cared about these characters. While not being as significant as Tallahassee's, the movie continues with moments like this. It shows us that Wichita struggles with trust and commitment, and Columbus with loneliness and a lack of human connection, which plays into his struggle with cowardice. In one way or another, these character points are resolved in a satisfying way towards the end of the movie, which ends in what feels like a happy ending that was actually deserved. And sure, this movie has its fair share of issues, but it was a blast to watch, and I actually cared to take the time to develop these characters despite the fact that this, after all, is a zombie action comedy movie. And on the other hand, you have this awful sequel. You guys had 10 years to make this thing happen, and this is seriously the best thing you can come up with? It seriously felt like they were sitting there at a board meeting and were like, "Oh no, the 10-year anniversary of Zombieland is coming up, we need to make a sequel." Surprisingly, however, that was not the case. According to an interview with Jesse Eisenberg, the writers started working on the script back in 2011. Now you may be asking, well, Flaming Donkey, why is it so bad? Well, let's start where we did with the first movie, the characters. Remember all those things called character arcs from the first movie and how the writers actually cared to make these people out to be human beings? Well, in Zombieland 2, they... How do I put this? They kind of went for something different. There was a little twist on that idea. Basically what they did is they said, fuck all that shit. Let's just throw in this super hilarious dumb blonde character named Madison, who is so funny because she's stupid, which makes her hilarious and so funny. Did I mention that she's funny? This character was single-handedly one of the most annoying characters I have seen in any movie in my entire life. Now, some people who have seen the movie and want to defend her might say, that's the point. She's supposed to be dumb. And to that I say, no. That's not the point. If you would like to have a character in your movie who's stupid, fine. If you want their primary character trait to be that they have the intelligence of a burnt fucking waffle, that's just fine. But where I personally draw the line is when you make that their only goddamn character trait. Throughout this whole movie, she does not do a single thing. Outside, of course, saying stupid lines that are supposed to be funny. She doesn't have any goals, she doesn't have anything to do, and she sure as hell doesn't have a character arc. She is literally just there for the camera to cut over to her so she can say some dumbass line so the audience goes, ha ha, she's so dumb. There is a scene where they run the same haha she's dumb gag for like 10 seconds straight. And I know that might not sound like a long time, but this is about 20 minutes into her being introduced as a character, so by this point you already want to shoot yourself in the head, so these 10 seconds feel like an eternity. Her existence in this movie is absolutely inexcusable. Even her introduction makes no goddamn sense. The movie wants us to believe that she lived in a freezer for 10 years at the mall and she's just out chilling in one of the stores when she bumps into Columbus. The movie goes out of its way to show us that she doesn't have any survival skills, but yet can somehow scavenge for 10 years without getting killed. Pretty much the only connection she has to the plot in any way is that she has sex with Columbus, which makes Wichita upsetty. But even that doesn't really end up becoming anything at all. Which brings me to the returning characters. The writers decided to completely throw any originality out the window and just make Wichita and Little Rock run away again. You know, like they did in the first movie. This is despite the fact that they showed us that Wichita conquered that character flaw in the first movie and got over her anti-attachment issues by telling Columbus her real name, something that is never brought up in this movie at all, by the way. But yeah, they pretty much just erase her entire character arc from the first movie by literally making her do the same thing again in this movie. Sure, I guess this time it's springboarded from the fact that Columbus tries to propose to her for some reason, and Tallahassee is being too overbearing as a father figure to Little Rock. But just because you tweak those two details doesn't change the fact that you hardly develop them at all and you're basically just having them do the same exact thing as they did in the last movie. Oh, but this time there's actually a twist. After Wichita and Little Rock run away from Columbus and Tallahassee, Little Rock runs from Wichita. Yep, these sisters who have pretty much only trusted each other for years before they even met Columbus and Tallahassee are now separated because she wants to run off with some hippie hipster pacifist that they found on the side of the road, I guess? I'm not even going to dive into him at all because everything I just said basically sums up the extent of his character. He's a hippie and he's a pacifist. Actually, you know what? I'll throw this movie a bone. The fact that he plagiarizes Bob Dylan and Lynyrd Skynyrd songs and claims them to be his own to impress Little Rock because he knows that she was super young when the apocalypse started is actually pretty funny. That's a good gag, so I'll give you points for that movie. Good job. So Wichita goes back to the White House. Oh yeah, they're staying at the White House, by the way, to steal another car and get some gear from them so that she can go after Little Rock. Now, I mentioned earlier how Columbus slept with my favorite character and that made Wichita mad. Well, that happened because it had been about a month since Wichita left Columbus and he was feeling really sad and depressed, and so when he found Dummy Dumb in the mall, she was really horny from being in the freezer for 10 years, and she said if he didn't fuck her, he was gonna fuck Woody Harrelson, and he's like, alright, bet, and so they had sex. So, predictably, when they all reunite in the garage to go after Little Rock, Dummy Dumb stumbles out of the bedroom with an incriminating line directed at Columbus, which prompts Wichita to think that he is already with someone else after only a month. The funny thing is, you'd expect them to actually drag this along as an actual conflict between Wichita and Columbus, but in reality, they just use it for jokes the whole movie, and it is never actually shown to bother Wichita on any serious level, so you can hardly even call it a conflict. There are never any consequences to this revelation that he immediately went out and slept with another girl. I shit you not, she literally just accepts his proposal at the end of the movie out of nowhere like nothing happened without them having to make amends at all. There literally isn't even a single scene in the movie that contains just Wichita and Columbus in it, let alone one of them having to talk anything out. She's just in the car with the rest of the group and all of a sudden she's like, hee hee, I'm still into you. Then later after the plot is wrapped up, she's like, alright, bet let's get married. Unfortunately, there's nothing to talk about in regards to either Columbus or Tallahassee. Most disappointing of all, however, is Tallahassee. The extent of his character arc in this movie is basically the fact that he claims to be Blackfoot Indian and needs to fulfill the zombie apocalypse equivalent of the Great Bison or Buffalo Run or whatever. Columbus, on the other hand, perfectly symbolizes the broader problem with this movie as a whole, as he's just essentially along for the ride. He seemingly has no independent motivation for going after Little Rock other than an obligation. At least Tallahassee has this underdeveloped but still mentioned idea of fatherhood over Little Rock that motivates him to go after her. Oh yeah, remember that badass moment from the first movie where Columbus conquers his fear of clowns by taking a sledgehammer to a zombie clown that stands between him and Wichita? Yeah, well now he's afraid of clowns again, especially when they're decals in an ice cream truck. I guess this movie just has a thing for completely undoing character arcs from the first movie. Overall, I can't help feeling anything other than disappointment in the lack of direction put into these characters that were handled with such care in the first movie. It is seriously a shame that after all this time, this movie served no purpose in pushing these characters forward in any way. In regards to the actual zombies in Zombieland, the intro to the movie claims that there are now mutations and variants of zombies. You got the Homers, which are the dumb ones, the Hawkings, which are the smart ones, and the Ninjas, which are the silent ones. And finally, you have the T-800s, which are the super strong ones. When you're watching this in the beginning of the movie, you think, oh, this is cool, it's gonna shake things up a little bit. These are gonna add some new dynamics to the action scenes and especially to the climax, right? Well, you would think that, wouldn't you? It turns out these zombies are essentially non-existent throughout this entire movie. The Homer is used for 2 offhand jokes. The Hawking is technically mentioned during one of the action scenes, but doesn't do anything remotely related to what it is described to be capable of in the intro. The Ninja pretty much doesn't exist at all in this movie, which finally brings us to the T-800s. It pretty much only really exists in one of the scenes, where Tallahassee empties magazine after magazine into its head without it dying, but they're technically part of the climax as well. I say technically for reasons I will get into later. So these zombie concepts mentioned in this movie are so laughably underused, they might as well not have been in the movie at all. I am now going to run through the rest of the plot of this movie as quickly as possible so I can stop talking about this garbage movie. So the 4 of them set off after Little Rock after Wichita explains that she left for Graceland, but unfortunately when they arrive, the home is in ruins and Little Rock is nowhere to be found. They go into the Elvis Museum / bar thing, and that's when they meet our badass woman character who is badass. Upon her initial introduction, I thought maybe, just maybe, she would be a new character who isn't just a one-dimensional caricature. Maybe she would actually be fleshed out and have an arc of her own. But surprise, surprise, she doesn't. She's just a rough and tough woman that matches Tallahassee's energy, so they sleep together. It is also at this time where they throw in these gag characters, Albuquerque and Flagstaff, who are pretty much just clones of Tallahassee and Columbus. It's actually funny for the first few minutes, but they decide to incorporate these characters into a whole scene, which ends up making their one-trick joke of haha, they're just like them, but they don't see the resemblance of each other get old very quickly. They should have just been passing cameo roles somewhere along the road that they bump into. That way we wouldn't have to watch their one joke go stale in this 10 to 15 minute long scene where they just very predictably turn into zombies and die at the end. So they leave the Elvis Museum upon learning that Little Rock and Hippie the Hipster have set off for the pacifist settlement called Babylon. A settlement that apparently regularly shoots off fireworks and has a giant ass tower covered in lights, but has still managed to survive the zombie apocalypse for 10 years? Keep in mind, these people don't kill zombies, so this movie expects us to believe that they have made it this far without attracting any zombies to their fireworks and light show exhibit. So they show up and the gatekeepers make them give up their guns so they can melt them into peace signs, yada yada yada. They go up and find Little Rock, but she doesn't want to go. They think, oh shit, maybe we should just stay here too. I don't see what could possibly go wrong living in this place while constantly being completely defenseless. Everyone, of course, but Tallahassee, who tells everyone that this isn't the way he wants to live and that he's going lone wolf again. After a heartfelt goodbye, he leaves Babylon for like 10 seconds, but surprise, surprise, now that our protagonists are here at Babylon, Tallahassee notices a giant horde of T-800s heading for Babylon because, you know, they're shooting off fireworks. Like I said earlier though, it doesn't really matter that they are T-800s because it doesn't actually affect how they fight them in any way. According to this movie, these zombies are supposed to be super strong and extremely difficult to kill, but I think this movie just kind of forgot. I really thought they might have gotten creative with this scene, seeing as they don't have guns and the zombies are supposed to be super strong, but I guess the writers didn't really feel like getting creative, and just like me, they wanted this movie to be over. So, like any other zombie movie, it's just a horde of zombies that's coming to attack the place that they are staying. They just set up propane and gasoline lines to blow the zombies up once they breach the gate. They blow them up, but of course there's still a bunch of zombies that come flooding in after. They have this really dumb fake out, oh my god, they're gonna die moment just before Badass Woman flies in on a monster truck to run over zombies and save them. But it's not over yet. They had the contingency plan to lead the trail of T-800 zombies up the tower and through the gauntlet of sheet metal that is being held up by the pacifist teenagers who have never fought a zombie before. You are telling me, out of that entire horde, not one of those T-800 zombies saw those cowering kids and decided to plow through them and their sheet metal since, you know, they're supposed to be stronger? So by some miracle, the entire horde keeps following after Tallahassee, who then fulfills his Native American prophecy of jumping off the edge of a tower, leading all the zombies to their death, just as his ancestors did to the bison. or the buffalo or something. Oh, but he doesn't actually sacrifice himself or anything. He just grabs onto a hook that's suspended off a building. Now imagine this for a moment. Imagine if they actually developed an arc for him in regards to his fathership he feels over Little Rock, and after tons of emotional buildup with him as a character, he actually jumps off and sacrifices himself because he didn't want to lose his daughter like he lost his son. That would have been super impactful and a great end to his character. But no, we need him alive for more sequels. So just like that, everything is wrapped up. Tallahassee has a girlfriend now, Hippie the Hipster and Dummy Dumb obviously get together, and Wichita just decides to say yes to Columbus's proposal out of absolutely nowhere, so they all live happily ever after. A predictable end for a movie that never had any stakes and took no risks with their characters whatsoever. Why bother adding these few lines of character development if you're not even going to actually take the time to develop them? The attachment Tallahassee feels for Little Rock as a father could have actually been developed and gone somewhere. Little Rock's desire for independence as she grows into a woman could have actually been developed and gone somewhere. The question of merits regarding whether Wichita's and Columbus's relationship was actually grounded in real feelings or whether it was a product of circumstances could have actually been developed and gone somewhere. But they never do. This movie instead opts for the safest, most boring approach to these characters, making this movie into the heaping pile of mediocrity that it is. Now, I know I just ripped this movie apart, but believe it or not, there actually are some things that I like about it. As a comedy, it was kind of funny. Some of the jokes that had nothing to do with her actually landed for me. Tallahassee, as usual, has some really funny lines. Also, I thought it was hilarious that being married was a term now in the Zombieland world, referring to people who accidentally shoot someone that they think is a zombie because people found Bill Murray's body from the first movie. Speaking of which, I love the mid-credit prequel scene of Bill Murray kicking ass during a Garfield press meeting when the zombie apocalypse breaks out. That whole sequence rocks. Other than that though, this movie does not have much to offer. I really wanted to like this movie. The first movie was excellent, and when I heard they were making a sequel, I was actually pretty excited. Sadly though, this ended up being one of the most disappointing films of 2019. After production's costs, this movie did make $50 million at the box office thus far, so it's likely that they have another sequel in mind anyway. But you know, maybe I should be optimistic about it. Maybe, just maybe, if they really care about the future of this franchise, the writers can turn things around and come back swing. All jokes aside, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching my first ever movie review. I really appreciate it, and I'm actually really excited to make more videos for you guys in the future. So if you guys aren't subscribed already, feel free to hit that subscribe button. I hope you guys enjoyed this review of Zombieland Double Tap, and if you did, go ahead and give this review a like. But if you feel like I'm full of shit and this movie rocks, feel free to smash that dislike button as well. I had a lot of fun making this review regardless, so whether you agree with me or not, I hope you were at the very least entertained. One more time, I just want to thank you guys, and I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day.